But the makeup of the court changes depending on who's president and who does the appointing. And I think that Donald Trump, made 3 appointments?
Yes.
So that shifted the court to a conservative majority.
Yes, it did. But also, those candidates also said they believed in upholding settled law.
Right.
So I guess you could say the polite way of saying it, they misinformed the Senate.
I kind of think that it's settled law until it isn't.
That's one way of looking at it.
Well, I mean, really, because if you have arguments, we don't know all the arguments that went on.
Right.
But if we have arguments that are cogent and make a good point, they're subject to changing their line of thinking on those things.
Right.
And we have seen justices make changes in that they were of one opinion and change at the last minute. And but it was a huge shock. I got a text message that morning, and actually it's from Richard Hardin. And I'm like, what is he talking about? And so I turned TV on, and I'm like, oh, wow, it was huge. And we're still seeing demonstrations, and it's still all over the news.
That's gonna keep going on.
Right.
And what has happened at the national level has already happened.
Right.
So what we need to be concerned about right now is what does this mean in Kentucky?
Right. Because basically, the decision doesn't outlaw abortion. It makes it's no longer constitutionally protected.
It turns the decision back to the states.
Right. It moves it back to the states. And as you have a map here, Margie, that has lots of different colored states. Many states have many different laws on the books right now regarding abortion. Kentucky has several years ago passed a trigger law.
In 2019.
Yeah, 2019. That if Roe was overturned, that this law, a new Kentucky law would would go into effect.
Yes, it would go into effect, and the only exception it has is if a proven risk to the life of the mother.
Right.
There are no exceptions for rape and incest.
Right, and I will tell you, Margie, I was troubled by that, but as we've talked about, a lot of, and I think in a lot of there's now how many similar trigger laws are there in?
There's
in the U.S.
Well, there are 26.
Yeah.
There are 26 states have trigger laws or versions.
Some version of it.
Yeah, or some version of that. And there are 2 or 3 states that have pre-existing laws on the book. There were pre-Roe laws on the books.
Right.
That didn't get thrown out by their state, although they weren't,
weren't applicable at the time.
Yes.
Yeah. But really, this decision puts it back on the states, and when you look at at Kentucky's trigger law, there are some. The general, let's put it this way, Margie. The General Assembly is going to have to take some action at this next session, because it doesn't include exceptions for rape and incest, and I think it's unconscionable to expect a victim of either that a woman would have to carry a child to full term in either instance. And I think we talked about it before, and these trigger laws were kind of, in a way, were feel-good political statements. Pardon me, at the time they were passed.
Right.
It showed that the supporters were, pro-life, and and they were passing this law that really would not take effect until Roe was overturned, and at the time, I doubt anybody expected Roe to be overturned.
I don't think they did either. It was a political talking point.
Right. So now it's way more than a political talking point. It's the law of the land in Kentucky that really stands to affect the life and health of all women of childbearing years.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm not a fan of abortion. However, I think that I think as a practical measure, it needs to be available. And I think especially for the exceptions that aren't in the trigger law need to be there. And that's one time Kenny Vogel and I were debating abortion, and he made a statement that it should be available but rare, and I think that's there's just times when it's necessary, regardless of your personal individual belief, and I think it so the General Assembly, dominated by Republicans, will need to deal with this, and that will be, I think, I don't know, I can't imagine them not dealing with it, not doing something, but at the same time, nobody expected them to have to do this.
Yeah, I think that's entirely true. But I mean, right now, what's available to the people in Kentucky? What's available to, and that is that anyone who is in medically need of an abortion is going to have to travel. Right. They are going to have to leave the states.
Yeah, Virginia.
Now, of the 7 surrounding states of Kentucky, 5 of them have these trigger laws,
right,
which will go into effect. The only 2 states are Virginia and Illinois, which do not. So right now, anyone who's medically in need of or has the choice of an abortion is going to have to go to one of those states.
Right.
And who this is going to affect the most are poor women and women of color.
Right. Right.
They are the ones who have the highest rates of maternal death. And talking about maternal death, maternal mortality, as determined by the CDC, says that maternal mortality means the number of deaths from any cause related to pregnancy and childbirth or within 42 days of the termination of a pregnancy per 100,000 live births. Kentucky has the absolutely worst rate in the nation for maternal mortality, with 37.7 per 100,000 live births.
Right.
And that the national average is 20. And the most healthy state, as far as that goes for women who are having children or who become pregnant, is California, and theirs is 11.2 per 100,000 births. So, no 2 ways about it, more Kentucky women are going to die. They are going to die because of the maternal death rate, or they're going to die because of botched abortions or the lack of abortions.
Well, I think the whole maternal death rate really goes back to our state's history of having poor prenatal care.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. The lack of family planning,
right,
and prenatal care. Yes.
I was doing research last night on the history of the Supreme Court decision on Roe. And Roe was actually argued twice before the Supreme Court. The first time, after the first set of arguments, 2 justices died, and they appointed 2 new ones, and they felt it was so important that they have a full court hearing on this. They re-argued the case.
Right.
Now, in between the 2 sets of arguments, the court had ruled on a contraception case, and I think it was Connecticut. A married couple in Connecticut wanted to use birth control, and I think the state law at that time forbade it. And so this had gone to the Supreme Court. Now, we hear with Roe was a decision based on right to privacy. Well, the first time Roe was argued, there was nothing about right to privacy. But between the 2 arguments, the Supreme Court had decided that on the matter of the contraception case out of Connecticut, they had a right to privacy without the state putting their nose in where it didn't belong. And so that was a precedent that the court set, and they turned back to that when they heard Roe for the second time and applied that same right to privacy to create, basically, it was a constitutional right that didn't exist, but they had the basis to do that. So anyway, so that was really interesting because I had, I was 13 at the time, and Margie, I told you this beforehand. I went to St. Joe Elementary as a kid, and around the time Roe was being argued and decided, my religion teacher gave us all turns to be Jesus. And we'd go up to the front of the room, and she would ask us questions. And she asked all of us questions about our thoughts on abortion. Now, I will tell you, I was just a dumb kid from Maple Hill, and I wasn't really sure what abortion was. And she's asking, well, Jesus, what about abortion? What do you think? And I'm like, I don't know, and well, what if the mother's life's in danger? And I'm like, yeah, I guess that would, I mean, that sounded reasonable to me, and well, let's just say that had the spanking machine at the principal's office been operational that day, they probably would have worn it out on me for the wrong answer. But anyway, so I kind of got in early on the controversial aspects of abortion, but we're kind of in that same spot now. And I think that there's no spanking machine, but I think our legislators, our state legislators, are going to be the ones that are going to have to hold their feet to the fire about this is a situation that really cannot stand. You cannot leave out exceptions for incest and rape,
Right. I think your example also points out the fact that this is a religious belief.
Absolutely.
And that do we really have the right to impose our religious beliefs on other people?
Good point.
Through
Good point.
What I think of is, why does the state have the ability to tell you what you can do with your body?
Well, that's a good question. Well, if you're driving, they have the right to tell you what side of the road to stay on.
Oh, yeah. But then that's a different issue.
Oh, I know because you're using state roadways, and it's a public safety issue.
Right. Exactly. So I wonder how the gentlemen who are in the legislature would feel if the state told them how many children they had to have or how many children they couldn't have.
Now, I saw a story, Mary Lou Marzan, I think's her name.
Yes.
She has filed some bills and some parodies or, to kind of point out the lunacy of some of these things. And she, apparently some of that had surfaced. Some of her commentary had surfaced and people were thinking it was legitimate or something.
Yeah.
But I think she enjoys pointing out that the standards you hold for one should hold for all, and not.
Right.
You
In a sense, women are being treated as second-class citizens,
Right.
Not having the same rights.
Right. Right.
And let's take it one step further.
Oh.
If you're going to punish a woman for having an unwanted pregnancy, why aren't you punishing a man who's responsible for that unwanted pregnancy?
Well, now,
Yeah.
because the woman is the gatekeeper, she has to say yes. I mean, that's my thoughts on it. If it's not, it's rape. It's a crime. You know.
So no equal responsibility here, huh? Women's really responsible for that.
Well,
they're totally
we're all responsible
for
for our behavior.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think we've learned a long time ago what causes pregnancy. And I think
Yes, we have.
and I think that
But you haven't answered my question.
all right, what's that?
That is, if you're going to hold a woman responsible for an unwanted pregnancy, why aren't you holding a man equally responsible?
Well, the courts will.
And being a gatekeeper is not the answer.
Well, I'm not so sure it isn't. I mean, the courts will hold if that child is brought to term. The courts will hold that man to responsible for providing support for that child. Mm-hmm. In theory, anyway.
In theory,
Yeah.
That doesn't it hasn't worked out all that well, but in theory, yeah.
Yeah.
But those are just issues that you need to think about it besides the legal issue.
Right.
I mean, this is
right. Well, and I understand that, and I think, but I don't know. I don't. The woman has. Well, I mean, women have to bear all the negative aspects of what happens if there's a pregnancy.
you won. Yeah, exactly. You're making my point.
Well, yeah. Well, I acknowledge that's true. That's true.
I think one thing that this law doesn't take into account is the fact that pregnancy is dangerous. It's a dangerous business.
Sure.
And for many women, it could be a death sentence. Literally, because of health situations. I mean, there are so many things that can happen during pregnancy. I mean, you can have hemorrhaging, you can have blood clots, you can have heart issues.
Right. Well,
and people who have previous conditions. If you're a diabetic,
gestational diabetes.
There,
right.
and if you're obesity is a health issue for women, and what this law does is it punishes women, particularly poor women and women of color. Those are the ones that have the most issues in childbearing.
Right. Right.
And the women who have money, women who have the means, are always going to be able to obtain whatever health care they need, including abortions.
Right.
They don't have to lose their job if they travel out of state and take time off.
Right.
They have the money to get on a plane and fly to wherever they need to go. The people who are going to who this is going to be the hardest on, are the people who can't afford it, who cannot afford that health care, who cannot afford that. So it's not only an issue of singling out women, but it's an issue. It's a socioeconomic issue.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, or whatever it's called now, their last the statistics I read last night on abortions in Kentucky, there were just over 4,000 abortions in 2020. The majority of those were women between the ages of 20 and 29, and most of them were white. It doesn't give any information on socioeconomic background, but that the two clinics in the state are, we're the majority of them. I think there were some hospitals listed, they had one, but one abortion on record for that year,
Right.
But clearly there is a need here, and abortion to me isn't good birth control, but
No.
you can't anticipate. How many of us have a friend or a neighbor or a family member who, once they became pregnant, began having problems, gestational diabetes or blood pressure problems? I mean, these were unanticipated things with the pregnancy.
That's what I'm talking about.
And it's conceivable that things could be bad enough to threaten the life of the mom.
Right, and I was lucky enough to be able to have 6 beautiful, healthy children.
Right.
But I was able to. I had good health care, and I was able to afford to raise those children.
Right. Right.
Many people do not have that.
Right. Right. And I agree. Well, I guess the next place we need to keep a close eye, Margie, I think are going to be on the state legislatures. These trigger laws, because I haven't looked at the trigger laws for all the nearby surrounding states to see if they also lack provisions for
Yeah, you'd have to go state by state, because
Right.
each one of them is a little bit different. I mean, like the trigger law in Tennessee it doesn't take place for 30 days afterwards. The one in Kentucky takes place immediately.
Yeah.
In Missouri, it has to have the Attorney General do an accreditation thing,
Right.
or something. So they all differ. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least, to see how this shakes out. But I mean, there are already lawsuits filed,
Right. Right.
challenging
Right.
that.
Right.
And of course, in the November elections, there's going to be a proposed amendment to the Constitution, which could make a huge difference. Let's see, Kentucky, the proposed constitutional amendment. I'm having a hard time reading in my eyesight here. Read that, Jim.
All right.
This was in today's paper.
All right. A ballot initiative on the November 8th general election, if approved by voters, would add an amendment to the state constitution declaring there is no constitutional right to abortion in Kentucky. Abortion opponents are working hard to ensure the measure passes, saying if it is approved, it will derail efforts to establish abortion as a state right. Advocates for abortion rights have mounted a campaign asking voters to reject the constitutional amendment that reads, "To protect human life, nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to secure or protect a right to abortion or require the funding of an abortion." Kentucky's Republican-controlled legislature, which has passed multiple laws to ban or restrict abortion in recent years, voted to place the measure on this year's ballot. All right, that's one of Deborah Yetter's stories.
Yes. Right.
So
this is not only an issue right now, it's an issue in the fall election.
So if that if that amendment would pass, then there would be no law the legislature could enact to allow for any abortion.
Right. So it's a very consequential law.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very consequential constitutional amendment. Let's
Right.
put it like that,
Right.
which would set law.
Right. Well, it really changes, all this changes the landscape of when, I'm pro-life, but at the same time, I see.
You can see times when it would be necessary.
Yeah. Regrettable, but it's, and I think and that constitutional amendment has wide-reaching impact on Kentucky.
Yes, it absolutely does.
But I don't know. I'm sure there will be lots of money spent promoting or campaigning for or against that
Right.
over the next. But I still think the General Assembly should be prepared to right a wrong, I think, in the state's trigger law.
Well, either that or they're, as you said earlier, they're saying it's okay to make a victim of rape and incest carry a child a term.
Right. Now, I've heard the arguments, well, that doesn't happen very often. Well, I don't know that we have statistics showing either way,
Oh, wait.
But if
Well,
it
I know
happens,
rape and incest happens in this state frequently.
Right. But we never know pregnancy rates and all that. But if it happens once, it's too many.
Right, exactly.
And you have no recourse.
No,
And that's.
no. You would, and if you're, like I said, if you're a poor person, you're doomed.
You have less recourse, fewer,
Right, exactly.
less access to abortion than you would if
Right.
you were a person of means.
I guess one thing I've never understood is why some members of the legislature seem very hot to also outline contraception. I don't understand that. Why would, if you're against abortion, then you ought to be for doing as many things as as you can to lessen that rate,
Well,
which would include contraception. And yet there are people who don't want insurance to pay for contraception.
Right.
They don't want people to do family planning. Well, I don't understand.
But they don't
their
want taxpayer dollars to pay for it.
Well,
I think. But some forms of birth control. I don't want to get too graphic here, but remove an implanted cells from the cervix, and can actually be considered abortive in the way they
what?
work.
Say that again?
Like an IUD keeps the egg from being planted.
Right. Well,
But I mean
that's preventing a pregnancy.
I know, but that in some people view that the same as an abortion.
Well, that again is a religious view.
Right,
It's not
right.
a medical view.
Right. Well, that's just. But if you want to know why some would object to that, that's the reason why. So, but yeah, you're right. A lot of this is what are your religious beliefs on, and the question is, when does life begin? And I think since
It doesn't begin before it's started. Jim, I mean, how does that work?
No, but at what point after conception do you consider it,
Well, we're talking about preventing conception.
Right,
We're not
right.
talking about dealing with it
Okay.
after it's.
Right.
This is preventing it. So,
Right.
yeah. You know, that's something I can't understand. I don't understand is how preventing a pregnancy is the same as
if it doesn't prevent it but ends it. I think is if you've got some birth control method like the morning after pill, that if there was a
fortunately that's still available.
Yeah. That's why some people would object to that too, or maybe their objection may be based on their understanding of certain birth control methods. You know, they may not be medical doctors, but they,
right.
You know, that's based on their understanding of it. So anyway, you know, everybody has their.
There's certainly a lot of food for thought here.
Yes. Anyway, it'll be interesting, really interesting to watch this amendment, to see what happens in November.
Well,
that's just.
I think that we're going to see that as a big political issue, and I mean, Republicans have used the threat of this law as a political statement.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're going to have to deal with the reality of it.
Very
and
true.
That was when it was.
It was easy to work with when you didn't have consequences.
Right.
You know.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Well, Margie, you know, we're both political animals here. Do you see gains for the Democratic Party, or as a backlash from this decision, perhaps in the fall, or even maybe even going beyond this, because it's still so new, and you know, November will only be 4 or 5 months from the decision. So,
right. Right.
You know, this I think it'd have long-reaching effects politically.
Well, I think it will. I think it will also. But what those will be, I don't know. Unless I think that, like particularly this constitutional amendment, I don't think people are aware of that. And on the ballots, that is always like an afterthought.
Right.
I mean, you have the people to be voted for. And then you have it listed, the constitutional amendments, at the bottom of the ballot.
Right.
So unless people are aware of that and know the implications of it, yes, there could be a big difference here in November. But I think the Democratic Party is going to have to play that up, let people know that is there.
Right. But that's going to be a fine line, I think, because you know, I've heard Democrats here in Nelson County say abortion and gun control are both topics that kill the party that aren't working in favor of the local Democrats, is what my take on that is. So I don't know if all of this dramatic change in landscape is going to make abortion a plus or a minus.
I don't either. I don't have a crystal ball on that, Jim. All I know is that it will make a huge difference. Whatever way it goes will make a huge difference.
Right, and after all these years, abortion is going to be back in the state. The state legislatures to control.
It's not going to. It's not going to be theoretical anymore.
Right.
It's going to be where people have to really face up to what they've passed. You know, I guess put it in terms of if this is your daughter.
Right. Right.
what would you feel?
Well, I know what I would feel, and I think states that are looking at complete bans on abortion, I don't know what that has to gain other than hurting your own citizens who may need health care.
Jim, I couldn't have said it better myself.
I don't see
said
the
it.
advantage of that,
No.
of a total ban.
No.
Now, unless you're pro-life to the point that it's not necessary. But I'm pro-life to the point I think it's necessary. I think it has to be allowed. I'm not a big fan of it, not obviously, but and it's a huge decision to
Yeah.
make.
I mean, why would a woman's life be less valuable than a fetus? Why
Right.
would it? Why would that be?
Right.
Right.
All right.
Well, we're not going to solve any problems here today, I
No.
don't think.
No.
But people do need to know what's down the road, what's happening and what's down the road.
Right, and I think it's going to be really important here on Bradford and Brooks as we get closer to the election to educate about that amendment.
Yes.
It's not just a feel-good amendment at this point.
No, it isn't. It has real implications.
And really, I think, as you said, the implications really are hard, especially harsh on those who can least afford to, who do not have the means to have other opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because if you're seeking abortion services and you've got to travel to Virginia or Illinois, you have to be able to afford to travel.
You have to be able to take off work.
Right. Right.
And you have to be able to have the money to pay for it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So anyway, we'll see if that amendment passes in the fall, and then
and also the outcome of the court cases.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already suit being brought
right.
to challenge that decision.
Right. Now, which decision? Are you saying like on the state level or
Yes,
federal?
the state level.
Okay.
No, the state level.
Okay. I think the General Assembly will wind up addressing the issue.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see how that works. Given the
And maybe we can pose the question to them, what would they do if it was their daughter? Right.
That's a tough question, but yeah, that's a good one. I kind of think that's how this should be framed. If it was your family member, what would you do?
Right. Be interesting to hear those answers.
Well, as we said, it was all theoretical for all these years of and now that Roe was overturned, now it's back to the states, and it's kind of you got to do something, time. It's got to.
Do you think the Supreme Court did a hot potato thing?
Well, now I'm not any sort of legal scholar, but I had read over the years that there were problems with the decision on Roe, and and like I said that earlier, the right to privacy was something that the court had actually just created in its own earlier decision, which it has the right to refer back to. I don't know. I think that there were enough justices who saw that it was who didn't agree with how it was decided, and I don't, not necessarily they didn't like abortion. The arguments didn't hold water, I guess. I don't know, but this is the most conservative court, I think, in how many years? And
I would say ever.
But it won't always be. So we'll, but certainly changes like that are far-reaching and impact a lot of people, and we're seeing a lot of protest.
Yeah, and you're going to see more. Yeah.
Right, and I would like to see some of that energy put towards action in the states. If abortion is going to remain a state issue, that's really where that's where the rubber's going to hit the road as far as making changes.
Right, unless the unless the Congress does.
Right.
Unless Congress makes.
I don't know if they're going to be able to codify to make the changes necessary for that.
Well, I think they could if they had the votes.
Well, if you had more Democrats, I think you would.
Right.
You could make that work. All right. Well, Margie, we got about 3 minutes left in today's radio show. I don't think we've ever really spoken this much about abortion.
No.
Because it's always kind of been a hot button issue. But I think we both come to an agreement. We may come from different perspectives, but we have a lot of agreement on
this state law.
Yeah. Now that it's back, and that I think we both agree that the General Assembly probably never anticipated that the trigger law would become the law of the land in 3 years.
No, I don't think so.
So
I don't think so. Do we have one more ad?
No, we're ready to go at the top of the hour.
All right.
And
so next week we have Raymond Penroa on. Next week.
We do?
Yeah. Don't we?
I haven't seen the schedule, Margie.
Oh, okay.
But I did want to let on upcoming in the upcoming weeks we will have representatives from the local veterans group. Will be on to talk about the proposed Veterans Park out across from McDonald's on US 150, and then also we'll get the mayor or somebody from City Hall to come in and talk to us about the expansion of the Mayor's Park at the corner of 3rd and Broadway. And I think both of those are going to be big additions to the community.
There is. And next week we are having Sheriff Raymond Penroa. He's going to talk about this gun tracing
that
they are doing.
That's right. Well, thank you for your institutional memory, Margie, and for writing it down.
Right.
All right, yes, we'll be talking about gun tracing.
Right. And how the Sheriff's Department is partnering with ATF to do that.
Right. And hopefully get defaced or illegal firearms off the street.
Right. In fact, I understand they've already found 2 guns that were involved in shootings and have had some success already in that area. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's going to do it for Bradford and Brooks. I hope you've had a great morning, and stay tuned for the news at the top of the hour. And Margie and I will be back next Wednesday for another Bradford and Brooks.
Home